Hi everybody. If you're watching this video, it means that I had a baby and I can't be there right now. But I wanted to still be able to give you some background on the project you'll be doing for the rest of the semester. So I figured for the final project of the year, I wanted to do something that would tie together a lot of different topics that we've dealt with this year. And for this purpose, there's probably no better place in the world than Anatolia, which is shown here outlined in the red rectangle. The reason for that is that Anatolia, or modern-day Turkey, has a really richly layered history that covers so many different cultures and peoples that we've studied this year. Part of the reason I know this is that I went to Turkey this summer. I spent 2 weeks traveling and learning about all of these things, and I actually made a video when I did it, and I think some of you might have even seen it, and that video included like a 3-minute thing going through like the really quick version of the history of Anatolia. And so what I will do is show that to you right now, as that gives you a broad foundation of why I say that this has such a richly layered history. Here we go. Given Anatolia's position at the crossroads between Europe and the civilizations of Western Asia, it shouldn't be surprising that it's been influenced by many peoples and cultures over the last 4,000 years. And I can just go through just a truncated list of many of the people who have influenced Turkey over the years. One of these is the Hittites. They became the first major empire to control Anatolia, starting around 1600 BCE. By the 8th century BCE, Greeks were beginning to colonize the coast of Anatolia. The Aegean coast of Anatolia became known as the home of the so-called Ionian Greeks, and you can see it on the map here, one of the areas that's in green. Even after new conquerors eventually took over this land, the kind of Greek cultural heritage continued to live on in the form of culture and language. One such conqueror that took over the region over the years was the Persian Empire, who took over the Greeks along with the Anatolian kingdoms of Lydia and Lycia and others, along with everything else that's in orange on this map. Although the Ionian Greeks had eventually gained independence, the Persians largely controlled Anatolia until the conquest of, you may remember, Alexander the Great. He's able to start in his homeland of Macedonia, conquer Greece. Well, his father conquered Greece, and then he conquered all of this area in Asia, including the Persian Empire. Now, as you might remember, Alexander was a good conqueror, but he didn't necessarily leave it in shape to remain united, and so what follows is the Hellenistic era, in which various kingdoms controlled different parts of what Alexander conquered. This is so-called the Hellenistic world. So Anatolia during this time period was under different Hellenistic kings until the Roman Empire. So during the Roman era, starting around 146 BCE, Rome was in charge of this area of Anatolia, or Asia Minor. Among many important things that happened during this time period, Rome saw the birth of Christianity, and Turkey plays a major role in the history of early Christianity because it's the site of many of the Apostle Paul's missionary travels. And so we can see this on this map, how many of his travels were actually in Turkey. Now, eventually, the Roman Empire is going to split into two halves. The western half eventually disintegrated, but the eastern half, the so-called Byzantine Empire, lasted another 1,000 years, and during this period, Constantinople grew to be one of the largest and most powerful cities in the world. But over the centuries, the Byzantine Empire began to lose territory, first to the Arabs and then to the Turks, which is the name of an originally nomadic people who converted to Islam. One Turkish dynasty, the Seljuks, pushed into Anatolia in the 11th century. After the Mongols took out the Seljuks, another group of Turks called the Ottomans finished off the Byzantine Empire. The pivotal event here was the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, which is depicted here in a 1902 painting. During the Ottoman Empire, the Turks inhabited Anatolia and made the peninsula the heartland of a huge Islamic empire that spanned 3 continents. One of the world's most powerful empires in the 16th century, the Ottomans began to decline and eventually crumble in the 18th and 19th centuries. In the wake of the Ottoman Empire's collapse at the end of World War I, Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, led a nationalist revolution that founded the modern nation of Turkey as a secular state. So thus, you can see Turkey has this really rich history, dating all the way back to the Hittites, Rome, Greece, Byzantines, Islam, modern Turkey, so many different layers to this past. So that was the super fast version of the history of this region. And what you're going to be doing is making your own sort of virtual tour that covers in a little more depth the various steps in this process by looking at specific locations in various parts of Turkey that shed light on each of these phases of Anatolian history. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so basically there's this thing called Tour Builder that's affiliated with Google Earth, and what it allows you to do is make a tour with a bunch of different stops, and the Google Earth will then like zoom in on the different spots in the tour, and when you get to each spot, it will allow you to kind of have a little text box which explains a little more about what's going on at that place, as well as some images that you can use. So for example, let's go to the first stop on this sample tour that I put together. This is Ephesus, which was a city that was colonized by the ancient Greeks. We can see that we're zooming in, and we can see the ancient ruins. The pin is in the Great Theater that you can see there, and sure enough, if you look at the picture on the left side, you can see me in the Great Theater of Ephesus, the kind of ground level view. Below that is something that you'll write about each stop on the tour. I only wrote a few sentences, but this would be 200 to 250 words that give some general background about the certain site and where it fits into the grander scheme of Anatolian history. So for example, in this case, you'd want to talk a little bit about the ancient Romans who eventually settled this and are responsible for most of the Ephesian ruins that we see here. Additionally, when you go to a given image, you can also write a caption. So you can see here I wrote a title, Great Theater at Ephesus, and then I wrote it had blah blah political implications, and then I also include the citation of where I got the image. So this is the general format of any given stop, right? There'll be a place on Google Earth, there'll be some pictures, and there'll be a sort of write-up, a little essay on the general background of the location. Let's go to the next stop in this virtual tour. We're going to travel to Istanbul, to the Sultanahmet Mosque, otherwise known as the Blue Mosque. As you can see, Google Earth will travel across the Turkish landscape and eventually zoom in on Istanbul. Pretty cool. Keeps going. There we go. Right? There is the Sultanahmet Mosque. Now, once again, we have pictures, and if you click on the pictures, you can see this beautiful exterior view of the Blue Mosque with my caption below, and you can have multiple pictures if you want. This is the interior of the mosque. So hopefully you generally see how this works, right? It will go from place to place, and ultimately you can tell a broader history of the Anatolian region through this kind of tour across the different cities in Turkey. So now let's go through the logistics of how this is going to work. Basically, you're each in groups of 6 or 7, and the instructions documents you have in front of you have a list of all the different teams. Now, each member of a given team is going to have 2 stops on the tour that they're responsible for. As you can see, most of these count as 1 unit, but if you look in the margin, there's a couple of these, like Topkapi Palace, that count as 2 units, and that's just because some are sort of double stops because you would have to do more research and more writing than you would for an average location. What you're going to do after the video ends, and do it after the video ends, not right now, is decide which stops you're going to do, and just make sure that everyone in your group has everything covered and that there are no duplicates. And at the end of class today, I'll be expecting an email from a member of your group which has a rundown of all the different sites and who is going to be responsible for which. And basically what we're going to be doing for the rest of the school year is researching and creating this virtual tour. Basically all of the classes until Wednesday, May 20th, will be devoted to this, and ultimately the finalized virtual tour will be due at the end of Wednesday, May 20th, the end of school on Wednesday, May 20th. On Thursday, what we'll be doing in class for the final day of the year is watching someone else's virtual tour. So you'll get to see all of this in action and be able to see the big picture of all of the different sites on the tour. So now I'll hop right back on camera to make a couple of points about what I'm looking for in this, and the big words, what I'm looking for. So the key thing here is I want you to research both the general and the specific. So for example, let's take Topkapi Palace. It's the palace of the Ottoman Empire. Part of what you'll need to research is just get a little bit of information about the Ottoman Empire in general, because you want to be able to provide that general context. Additionally, you want to be able to research the specifics. So for example, Topkapi Palace has all these different buildings and different portions, and each of those tell a story. And so depending on what you're doing, you might be having a picture of a temple or a ruined theater, or whatever the case may be, and you want to be able to tell a specific story about that physical evidence. But importantly, you are not just telling specific data, right? You're not just saying, here's a bunch of random details about this place. You're trying to tell a story about historical significance. And that's something we've tried to do all year. Not just collect a lot of information, but interpret that information and talk about what is historically significant about it. And if you're having trouble doing this, remember SPICE that we talked about at the beginning of the year. Social, political, interaction with the environment, cultural, economic. These are the kind of implications that historians care about. So as you're researching, don't just consider, oh, how many steps did this theater have, or, how many blocks of stone there were. That in itself isn't useful, but the larger story it tells about the people and the culture who built that item, that is interesting, and that's what I want you to focus on.